Welcome back to the Overheard Podcast, recorded live in Banff. My name is Daniel Rudel. With me always is my co-host,
Matty Rage. Let's go.
Let's go. If it's your first time joining us, please don't forget to give us a little like and subscribe. We check the analytics every week. A bunch of people are checking us out for the first time and don't manage to find the subscribe button.
It's like right down, wait, where am I? Right down here.
It's right at the bottom. So please, if you're joining us for the first time, don't be shy to give us a like and subscribe. Please go like and subscribe to YWCA Banff as well on all their social medias. You can find them on Instagram and everywhere. Our guest today, very happy to be sitting with Melissa.
Hi.
And Jemima.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks.
Melissa's a consultant for the YWCA Banff who also works with SHIFT, a project to end DV at the University of Calgary. And Jemima is the project coordinator with Harmony Project, which is a program of the YWCA. Before we get too far into things, we're going to check in with our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Drink Shaft. When it's summer in the Bow Valley, early isn't optional. First light on the fairway, glassy water at the shoreline, that warm hit of sun that tells you the day is yours. There's a difference between showing up and doing it right, and that's Drink Shaft. Cold, nitro-infused, non-alcoholic, it's the Bow Valley's #1 grab-and-go cold brew. So start the day early and do the day right with Drink Shaft. Let's get right back into it. If you've never met our guests or know what they do, we'll start with Melissa. Melissa grew up in Calgary, spending her weekends right here in Banff in a small cabin on Tunnel Mountain. From an early age, she was immersed in mountain life, skiing, hiking, and paddling throughout the park. Her career has taken her around the world, with time spent living across East and Southern Africa, as well as Southeast Asia. There, she worked alongside governments, community organizations, and nonprofits focused on creating meaningful, long-term social change. Since returning to Calgary in 2004, Melissa has shifted her focus closer to home, specializing in research, evaluation, and strategy. She's worked with community agencies, public institutions, and funders across Western Canada to better understand what drives effective programs and real impact. Since 2020, Melissa has been working with SHIFT, the project to end DV at the University of Calgary, helping test and evaluate an innovative approach called the Signal System, which we'll talk about in a little bit, designed to influence workplace culture and support safer, more respectful environments. She's now bringing that work to the Bow Valley in partnership with the YWCA Banff, collaborating with hospitality partners to strengthen workplace culture across the region, which I think we can all say is a little needed for sure. Thank you for joining us today. We're also here with Jemima. Jemima is based right here in Banff and is focused on advancing gender equity and building safer, more respectful communities. She grew up locally, attending Banff Elementary and Banff Community High School before continuing her studies in gender studies and international relations at McGill University. So actually born and bred in Banff, huh?
Not born.
No,
but
not
raised.
born? Oh, raised in Banff. Hey, that's good. Still quite rare in that sense. Her work has taken her into both nonprofit and international spaces where she's contributed to initiatives centered on gender equity, prevention, education, and human rights. After returning to Banff, Jemima stepped into her role as Harmony Project Coordinator with YWCA Banff this past October. In that role, she supports early intervention and prevention-focused programs and helps coordinate initiatives across the Bow Valley that aim to strengthen community awareness and response. Having been involved with the YWCA programming way long ago growing up through initiatives like The Power of Being a Girl, this work is deeply personal. She's now back in her hometown, contributing to the same organization that helped her shape her early experience. Let's start things off. Can you give us each a bit of background of what got you into the work that you're doing today? Let's start with Melissa.
Sure. I mean, as you mentioned, my early professional life, I spent a lot of time overseas, and I wanted to come home and sort of focus my efforts more locally in my own community with my family and friends. And my introduction into this field was really through a prevention lens and coming to it in terms of engaging men in preventing violence. I feel really committed to helping to create spaces where people, all kinds of different people, can thrive. And I think working to enhance safety and belonging goes a long way towards achieving that.
Absolutely. I think there's lots to talk about there.
Yeah,
for
for
sure. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for joining us. We're going to get into a lot of that later on.
Great.
What about you, Jemima?
Yeah, well, if I go way back to when I was growing up here in Banff, I was involved with gender equality organization. And I was involved with it for about 8 years after that as well. And that kind of sent me on a trajectory of wanting to pursue my studies in gender studies and international relations, like you mentioned. And then also focusing my career so far on advancing gender equality and this prevention work. And similar to what Melissa's saying, like in terms of I'm drawn to the work that centers the root causes of violence and understanding the dynamics that contribute to it, and especially working with the why, and with it being so integrated in the community, I see this as just being really high impact work, and that's ultimately what drew me to this role that I'm in now.
For sure,
Yeah.
high impact is definitely the focus, especially being here in the Bow Valley, being the situations that we find ourselves in, both men and women, obviously, young age, compromising situations. There's lots going on, lots to unpack. Melissa, can you walk us through what SHIFT is and what that specifically is focused on?
Sure. So SHIFT is a research action hub based in the University of Calgary, the Faculty of Social Work, and it's got sort of one clear mission, which is to stop violence before it starts. So really oriented around prevention. It's led by Lana Wells, and she's the Brenda Stratford Chair for the prevention of DV. SHIFT doesn't work only inside the university, but collaborates with researchers, community groups, policymakers, nonprofits, and government to try to develop and test and scale prevention efforts in a range of settings. And I think SHIFT's aim is really to equip people with the insights and skills to build safer and more equitable communities and spaces.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Right on. Jemima, what about the Harmony Project, and how does that look on the ground, and how do all these initiatives tie in together for what we're here to kick off this month?
Yeah, so the Harmony Project focuses on prevention work here in the Bow Valley, and then also coordinates awareness initiatives and response services in town as well and across the Bow Valley. And the Harmony Project is based within the YWCA Banff, and the Y is really uniquely positioned in the sense that it provides emergency services in town, but it also looks at the broader picture, and also similar to SHIFT, is working to stop the violence before it even starts. And in doing so, we really center community structures, norms, power dynamics that really play into exacerbating this violence. This is also for the Y. Primary prevention is a core focus and a priority, and we can really see the Harmony Project as one key initiative that is helping to mobilize this work within the Bow Valley. And tangibly, in terms of what this actually looks like, for prevention work, we've facilitated healthy relationship workshops with youth in the Bow Valley, and then also working alongside workplaces throughout town to help advance safety and belonging in the workplace. And then in terms of the emergency response services, we provide emotional support or system navigation or shelter services for anyone who might have experienced harm here in the Bow Valley.
In my research, I was on the Harmony Project's website specifically, which you can find through YWCA Banff, and the resources there are amazing. Again, if you ever feel like you're in a situation that isn't favorable for you in the workplace or other, it has a lot of kind of definitions and really good explanations on if you feel you might be in that situation, on where to start and how to get the ball rolling for yourself as far as getting out of that situation, which is awesome. So I implore everyone to go check it out. Maybe bookmark it if you're in one of those situations. You check with it more frequently. In the Bow Valley specifically, the hospitality sector is an important place to focus this work. Why do you think that makes such a difference? Like you mentioned, high impact. Why is the hospitality sector such a hotbed for this type of activity?
Yeah, I think in the Bow Valley, it's important to recognize that so much comes into play in terms of contributing factors to contribute to harm in the Bow Valley. And in recognizing this, it requires a multifaceted approach and strategies that really target the root causes behind it. And when we think of the hospitality industry, it's one of the leading industries here in town. Over 60% of people who are employed here work in hospitality, and it's a key economic driver here as well. So at the Y and in our partnership, we really see it as a key site for opportunity and a space where we can really work to shift culture and make that meaningful change at a cultural level and having a lot of influence in that sense.
I would agree with you there. I think the hospitality industry kind of known for being a little fast and loose on the rules, and things that happen in these workplaces aren't always kind of overlooked. I don't know, how would you describe it? They aren't super policed, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, some restaurants, it's like, hey, I'm the HR department. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really, like, it's not really like an office workspace, or, you know, it's like, a lot of the places aren't compartmentalized where, like, you know, you go to the HR department. It's like your HR department might just be some guy working online, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just, like you said, fast and loose, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think our experience in our relationships with different industry partners has been really positive, and their commitment to creating safety and belonging in the workplace, to making sure that their staff feel comfortable, feel safe, can do their jobs and perform effectively. I think one of the things that I was struck by when we first started doing this work was the real commitment to this cause and the real commitment to supporting it, recognizing how much influence hospitality industry partners have in town, and really trying to be part of this and solution finding, and being willing to invite us in and share information with us and help us understand the challenges. So I think that was one of the things I was really struck by when we first started doing this work. And as Jemima said, the industry is such an opportunity. It has so much influence over so many people, and that if we can enhance safety and belonging in those workplaces, it spills out into the community, into the streets, with guests. This helps to set expectations for how guests might behave, patrons. And so I think that was those are the things that really struck me when we started doing the research.
And also, I think being maybe a younger workforce is just the perfect opportunity to get messaging and get knowledge into people's heads while they're young, right? And to curb these behaviors early.
Well, some of the hospitality industry, too, is just so old school. Like, you know, you might have a guy who's been cooking for 50 years. You know, the kitchen, even 20 years ago, was a far different landscape than it is today, right? Like, you know, you it's online, and it's changed so much even in the past, 10 years that change for some of the older crew might not be as easily obtained, but it's just the nature of that workforce, right?
It's a lot to manage. There's a lot of diversity.
Right. It's that kind of. It's always been that kind of rough and tough. Kind of, you're in the kitchen, just rough it out. You know what I mean? But
it does attract a broad variety of lifestyles as well. So, yeah. When you looked at the data coming from the Bow Valley specifically, what was kind of some of the biggest surprises or contradictions that emerged the more you learned about this topic specifically?
Well, YW and Shift started working together in 2023 and doing some broader research around Banff, and it's part of a broader rural project that's being funded by the Government of Alberta. And did a series of community consultations and pulled from RCMP data and looked at that. And I think what surprised us at first was that rates of SV in Banff are higher than the provincial average and higher than the national average. And so that surprised us. The other thing that we learned was that between 2019 and 2023, overall crime in Banff actually decreased by about 38%.
Wow.
But the rates of SA increased by almost 13%. And so we've got
why do you
this.
think that is?
Well, we wondered, and we were trying to figure out what was going on, and I think what was worrying was that overall crime was decreasing, but SA was increasing, and so we were surprised by that. And when we started to explore further some of the unique characteristics of Banff as a global tourist destination, as a mountain town, and all the things that go along with that, it started to become clear why there are unique risk factors here that might not exist in other communities.
What are some of those risk factors that are unique to Bow Valley?
I think that whole part about it being a global tourist destination, you've got, tens of thousands of people coming into this town every year.
Yeah.
You've got affordable housing is a challenge here, and the way that staff accommodation is set up, it's hard sometimes for people if they want to leave. It's hard to find someplace to go. I mean, you've got the shelter at the YW, but it can be hard to move around.
Sure.
I think you've got a transient population, more than 1,000 people come into town to work every year.
Yeah.
You've got a young population, and young people often who are far away from home and don't have the usual supports that they might get from home.
Yeah, fair.
And then I think the last thing is vibrant nightlife.
Yeah, exactly.
Drugs and alcohol, that combination really increases risks for violence. So I think all of that combined creates a unique environment here that might be contributing to those higher rates. I think what's important is that those rates are reported. Most of SV goes unreported.
100%,
Only about
yeah.
6% of people actually report when they
6%?
experience something. Yeah.
Wow.
So to see those
Yeah.
stats go up in those numbers is quite alarming,
Right.
for sure.
So it's a unique place with, I think, unique challenges, but also unique opportunities for solutions.
100%. Wild.
Yeah.
I didn't know that the statistics were that low as far as
Yeah.
reporting. Because
Well,
I
it's
kind of was
really
thinking
low.
of maybe
Yeah, like
maybe
what-
it's a reporting thing that the numbers were going up, but it's like,
I do think it's changing. Like, I do think some of the things you talked about restaurant industry changing,
Right.
younger population, I do think people are starting to feel confident enough to report more. I think these kinds of podcasts and
Yeah.
the Me Too movement, all of that has
Yeah.
helped grow confidence. But there's lots of reasons people don't want to report that you don't. I mean, I can talk lots about how it impacts people's whose employment is maybe
we have
connected
like
to
power
their
dynamics.
Power
you brought
dynamics.
that up. That's huge,
Yeah.
right? So when you're
Don't lose your
lodging, your
job.
job,
Yeah,
all
exactly.
that is all under the
Connected.
same boat,
Yeah.
and you maybe have someone who has power over all that,
Yeah.
who's using that
Yeah.
for their benefit.
Yeah,
That
you don't
becomes
want to
a
be a
dangerous
troublemaker.
situation.
You don't want to lose your job. You don't want to make a fuss. You
Right.
don't. I think there's there may be cultural and social norms. I think for young women, we're sometimes brought up just to, be accommodating. I think sometimes we're not sure: is this harassment? Is this not harassment? Is it not? So I think there are many, many things that contribute, and the systems that support folks, if you do want to go the legal route, can be really challenging.
For sure.
And can be traumatizing. So I think those are all the reasons that contribute to that.
Absolutely. Asking someone to relive that to get justice
Yeah.
is kind of,
It can be really hard.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword in itself, right? We kind of talked about it, we kind of brushed on it briefly here, but how does having, you mentioned transient population, different cultures all together in the Bow Valley, how does that impact communication when it comes to
Workplace
interactions in the workplace or in nightlife,
Yeah.
in bars and restaurants, and what happens afterwards?
I think certainly the research and experience would show that diversity is a real benefit. It has a ton of benefits, especially in hospitality. You've got diverse teams tend to be more adaptive. They're better at solving problems. People ask more questions when they come. You don't get into groupthink. They tend to improve guest experience. In the interviews that I did with staff in hospitality, they would say that guests love it when a staff can speak their language or comes from an interesting place. It
Yeah.
adds to the
Yeah.
dynamic. You walk into a restaurant, it's like, oh, you're from Australia, and those kinds of conversations. So I think it's a real benefit to the hospitality industry. It also comes with lots of challenges, as you're saying, in terms of different communication styles, where you grew up,
Yeah.
households you live in, or the communities you come from dictate how you, don't dictate, but definitely influence how you communicate with other people. I think you have varying English language skills, and that sometimes means that people might need additional cues to understand what needs to be happening.
Right.
Limited supports, we talked about that in terms of social supports, and people might either be trying to handle challenges on their own or they're bringing challenges to work. And then it also means lots of different norms, contrary norms are interacting. And so trying to navigate all that is
For sure.
a challenge.
That's kind of what comes to my mind first as the
Right.
initial problem is like some interactions may be deemed okay in certain regions of the world, but very much not okay in others certain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly.
it's kind of getting everyone on the same page as far as a workplace and a community. And I think the biggest thing is calling out behaviors from an outside perspective, right?
Oh, yeah.
The person doing it, I don't know, you've heard this before, like, I'm just giving a compliment. And it's like, well, no, it's the way that you're doing it that
Right.
is
Yeah.
insincere or
Inappropriate,
causing distress,
yeah.
right? So I think that is a huge part of it, for
It is.
sure.
Yeah, having the courage to disrupt that kind of thing in ways that doesn't create blowback and defensiveness. And I think that kind of, we talk about this notion of calling in versus calling out. Calling out tends to make people defensive. You don't learn
Right.
when you're
Sure.
defensive or when you feel ashamed. And so really focusing on getting curious or in subtle ways, we'll talk about this later, but a bit of like, whoa, dude, that's not okay, can go a really long ways
Yeah.
to shutting down a behavior.
Like the big question is, as far as all of this is involved, is how do you change learned behaviors in people that are already prone to this negative, right? Like how do you get to the root cause and have them not act out this negative action that's happening, right? Very interesting. I feel like that's the $1 million question,
It is,
right?
yeah.
We talked a little bit about living in Staffacom, right? And living, working, and playing together. Good thing or bad thing? What are your thoughts coming from your perspectives?
Yeah, I definitely think what we touched on about just if your accommodation and employment and everything is tied up together, it does definitely create a unique sense of vulnerability, especially in this context. I think another thing that's interesting to think about is if harassment does happen in the workplace, the most common reaction is to not say anything at all. And if we do have this like dynamic of working, playing, living together, it just to protect our relationships, that just feeds into not wanting to disrupt or maybe not speaking out, although it might go completely against your norms or what you believe in. That can feed into just not speaking up because you're wanting to maintain those dynamics and everything is so interconnected. So I think it feeds in many different ways for sure.
What would kind of be the best way for someone to navigate that, in your opinion? If, say, they're in that scenario and they want to speak out but don't want to disrupt that social hierarchy or whatever.
I think we'll touch on this as well and feel free to
sure.
jump in, but
Yeah.
I think small things like just signaling what kind of behavior is expected in a workplace can really go a long way. And again, in terms of the calling in approach and really wanting to understand maybe why something was said or just approaching it with curiosity and almost through a question to open it up and put someone maybe on the spot of wondering why they might have said that in the first place.
For sure. I think questioning someone about the way they said it, maybe they didn't even think about it before they said it, you know? So having someone call in their own actions or words is a very, very strong tool as far as asserting your position and this was wrong, right?
How's job security, especially for people, maybe temporary workers,
Yep.
people on work visas, how does that influence whether someone wants to speak up or, say something about someone's behavior?
I think there's, again, part of the uniqueness in Banff, lots of people on temporary
Right.
work permits or on a holiday working visa. And
Yeah.
what we sort of identified is it's a bit of a triple threat. Like when
Right,
your
right.
employment and your housing and your immigration status are all tied together,
Fair. Yeah.
you're less likely to speak up. You really don't want to lose your housing. You don't want to have to leave the country.
Right.
And so I think that does contribute to people's unwillingness to say anything. They don't want to be a troublemaker. They just want to not rock the boat and kind
Yeah.
of keep things going. I think it means that if they witness or experience inappropriate behavior at work or in housing or even in a social gathering after work, they're less likely to say something. And I think that some of this can be further compounded for folks who come from different cultures where different understandings of consent might
Fair, yeah.
come into play. There are in some places, women in lots of places, women are taught to be more deferential, more accommodating. Some cultures are not, you don't talk openly about sex or intimate things. You wouldn't never talk about that with your boss.
Right,
or with
right.
something like that. So it's hard to come forward in that way. And then I think more indirect communication styles, folks who come from places where it's more indirect, saying no often isn't really explicit and verbal. A lot more weight on nonverbal cues, and sometimes that's hard to understand. And those things are really ingrained in us, and so part of the work that we do is helping to build some cultural competence around, like, okay, I come from here and I communicate in this way, so I expect everyone else to communicate like that. But if you're a manager or a supervisor and you're overseeing a team that might have people from the Philippines or people from Southeast Asia and Australians and Brits all together, they're going to have vastly different communication styles.
Right.
So those supervisors need to be aware of that and understand that they might really need to pay attention to body language for some people, and
Right.
other people might be very forthcoming in terms of, this is not okay here, that's how they were brought up, and they feel really confident to bring something forward. So
Well put.
lots of stuff.
For sure.
Lots of stuff to navigate, for
like
sure.
that exact scenario that you painted with, you know, the manager and people from all over, like that happens
Yeah.
more
All
often
the
than
time.
not, especially
Yeah.
in the Bow Valley, right? So
And these supervisors are really trying to do their best to keep people safe and happy, but it takes a lot of skills and building those capacities. You know, if you're often what happens in the service industry is you're a great bartender and then suddenly you're a manager.
Yeah, exactly.
not a
You
lot
move up
of-
pretty quick.
yeah.
Move up pretty quickly. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, been here 3 months. Would you like to manage?
Yes.
true, but there's not much like interpersonal training that goes into
No.
that and how
Right.
to
There's
deal
not.
with these situations, right? Like
So that's what we focus on, is building some of those skills in terms of managing that those interpersonal interactions, setting expectations. What does it look like? We often focus on operational expectations, but don't
Right,
focus
right.
on interpersonal ones. And going back to your comment about how do you influence behaviors, and I think it is, the signal system focuses on norms.
yeah.
That norms are really strong drivers of behavior. So we can interrupt or call people out all we want, but we look to other people for how to behave in a certain setting. And if people we like and respect are sending out signals about what's okay in this setting, and that, you know, in some settings, like that it's okay to make these kinds of jokes or make these kinds of comments, then we think that's okay. And if those people who we like and respect are sending signals that suggest those things are not okay, you pick up on that very quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a
That's
huge
how you
point
influence
right
behavior,
there. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Wow, that's great. It's great that you have at least the commitment from the management teams that are
Totally,
interested in this.
100%,
Like on the
yeah.
flip side, what is giving you optimism that your work is making a difference?
I think Banff's a really tight community, and I feel like when people here rally around something, things happen very quickly. I think, you know, as Jemima said, hospitality has really demonstrated some commitment to this, and when 60% of the folks who live in Banff work for hospitality, that if you can make changes there, it's really going to affect the whole town, community, and the culture. I also am really optimistic in terms of the alignment between what we're trying to do and hospitality's kind of bottom line. Our work to enhance safety and belonging in the workplace goes a long ways towards improving team performance, improving well-being among staff, and increasing retention. And turnover and retention is a huge issue.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the alignment of those things, what we want to do and what the hospitality industry is trying to do, really helps to make me optimistic about what we can do in Banff.
Amazing. What about you, Jemima?
Yeah, I think also just building on what she's saying about the momentum really in town right now, and we see that in many different ways. There's the Bow Valley Workplace Inclusion Charter, which has a lot of different workplaces that are signed up to it and making commitments to making their workplaces safer and more inclusive. And then also on the side of the town and municipality, we have the Y has the support of the mayor and the councillors, and they're really committed to doing this prevention work that we're talking about, and not just looking for the simple like Band-Aid solutions, but they're wanting to know what's going to create change and what the evidence is saying that is going to make a difference. So that's also just having that support from the town and having those initiatives going on simultaneously. I think there's a lot coming together right now to help build the momentum.
For sure, because when we talk online, or when you look online, there seems to be this perception that this topic is kind of brushed under the rug in the Bow Valley or in Banff specifically. I think we're kind of turning the corner on that slowly but surely. Of course, tourism is huge. Perceptions want to be upheld. But the reality is these things are happening in our communities, and it's up to us to stop them or to at least help curb them as much as we can. Employers being involved is huge. Town of Banff being involved is huge. We've got to give them a big, big thank you. I think it falls on the individual as well, right? Managers, if you see something, you got to say something, right? Yeah. I love the concept of calling in instead of calling out. What does that mean more specifically for our audience? That's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah. I think it's really, we've seen what's happened with call-out culture, call-out and cancel culture. People just get shut down, they disappeared. If what we want to do is change behavior and create a safer, more welcoming culture, we don't want to punish. We want things to change. And when people are ashamed, they don't change. They don't learn and they don't change. So I think calling in is just an approach to engaging somebody with curiosity, frankly, with love and kindness and a bit of empathy. As you said before, people sometimes say things, they don't mean them. They sometimes are trying to fit in and they're getting it wrong. And so I think calling in is really just empathy, curiosity, humility, and engaging with our friends and the people we care about in ways that helps them to learn, helps us all to learn.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting with social norms and how they function that they're so powerful that sometimes we'll go against our own values to adhere to a norm. So you might have a guy who feels really strongly about gender equity, and but he's out with his buddies at the bar, and one buddy is making some kind of sexist comments about the server. And he might survey this situation and decide, I'm not going to say anything. The social risk is too great.
Well, especially in a place like this, right? Everybody's kind of here. It's a whole new town. It's a whole new group of people. You're trying to make friends. You're trying to fit in. You're trying to kind of find your place. And who you want to associate with, and that can make it hard sometimes
really
to
hard.
kind of put your foot down, and you almost don't want to alienate yourself from the group of people that you've been hanging out with or making connections with because of someone's stupid comment.
Exactly.
So.
Belonging is a basic need.
For sure.
We have to, and so I think in that situation it can be really hard. But if there's somebody else at that table who's liked and respected, who just raises an eyebrow, the subtlest thing, whoa, not here, or that's offside, or the smallest thing can really disrupt it and sends a signal to everybody else at that table this isn't okay here. And so I think it's those kinds of ways that you can disrupt behaviors without alienating yourself, without creating a bunch of blowback. But that's what we focus on. It's kind of why it's called the signal system, is these small everyday actions that signal what's okay here and what's not.
What would be your advice to someone to keep their cool in one of these situations where you're calling someone in instead of calling out? Because I feel like that might be a confrontational situation. It's got to be tough to control those emotions, to lash out and call someone out. You know?
I think, I think it's interesting that those situations I don't think happen as much as we think. It's more these subtle situations where you have to kind of screw up the moral courage to say something. And I think some of the things that we focus on is making the commitment to yourself in advance. I've been in situations where a friend's made a racist comment. I haven't had the courage to disrupt it, to say something at the time. But I've made a commitment to myself, next time that happens, because almost always there's going to be a next time, I'm going to say something. And make that commitment. I practice. What am I actually going to say to her to disrupt this? So I think it's those kinds of things, to be really intentional about not wanting this behavior to be okay. And I think historically there were words that were used that were commonplace. We've all stopped using them. It's just because people started to make it it's not, and it's not that it's PC, it's just that it's not okay. So, and we all learn that. But
it's you can easily just not offend someone by using the correct word. Why would you want to do that?
I had nicknames in high school that you would not be allowed
to never.
say.
Exactly. Exactly. Things have changed.
What are some of the norms when it comes more to hospitality specifically? We've been, talking about some now, the inappropriate jokes or maybe letting those slide. What are some of those norms that you feel have become normalized that maybe need a second look as far as what's still kind of happening in hospitality?
This isn't really, maybe it is a norm, but I think it's more a philosophy, this idea that the customer's always right. I think that's maybe...
We all know that's not the case
Yeah.
sometimes.
And I think that that's maybe something that in the hospitality industry could take a second look.
Yeah.
I know guest experience is really important, and
Right.
making sure that visitors who come to Banff have a really wonderful time. But I think sometimes there's a tension between giving guests like their best experience and tolerating problematic behaviors.
Right.
And so I think leadership and managers can give staff the confidence that when they see something that's not okay, behavior from a guest, that they have the right and the skills, the confidence and skills to disrupt that, to shut that down, and that staff know that leadership will have their back. And I think, again, that's the whole town. This is, I think, the Tourism for Good initiative is so amazing, and I think there's an opportunity, and it focuses on, guest interactions and expectations with staff. I think we can take that further in terms of behaviors around SV and harassment, and so I think it's that piece, that there are limits to the customer always being right.
For sure. In my opinion, customer is never right.
I've been there, man. I've seen it. Like I've been out for dinner, just out for dinner with the girlfriend, and you got buddy at the table behind you just absolutely going off on a server. And like I've done it before, turn around like, buddy, like one more word, we're gonna have an issue. Like, do not yell at people. She's not a dog. You don't snap at her. Like you're not yelling at like your pet. Like even if you were, don't yell at your pet that way. Like it's not appropriate. Like.
But it also goes both ways.
Oh, yeah.
Being a male server, I've been approached in some of these situations highly uncomfortable, especially with touching.
Right.
Where maybe they think it's okay because you're a man and you're not a woman. But if you flip that, scenario in reverse, like that would not be okay. But maybe a female thinks it's okay because you're a man in that situation.
Well, I think these are the perfect examples of where these small things, like you turning around and sort of shutting that down, sends that message so clearly.
Right.
And again, being a male server and somehow communicating to the, your female guests, like, no, that's not okay. Whether, like, I think any behavior that makes somebody feel uncomfortable is not okay, whether it's a man to a woman or a woman to a man, or and I think these small signals, they go way further than you think. So having the courage to say that to that guy, like, that's not okay. You need to treat her respectfully.
I embarrassed him completely in front of his girlfriend. She was like hiding her face. Like, oh my God, is this happening? And I was like, well, your boyfriend's being kind of a jackass, so he's gonna get told not to.
Well, another thing that came to mind as we were discussing this is like comments on appearance. Very common in the workplace, as well as like the nightlife experience. That can very quickly become harassment or something very much unwanted. So I think that is definitely one of the norms I think that's happening currently that we can maybe use a little bit of work on for sure.
I think that also with you just saying what deserves a second look, realizing what you just said there, or also like malicious gossip, sexist comments that get so normalized in the workplace, but realizing that those really lay the groundwork and the conditions to allow for more high intensity behaviors to take place. And in recognizing that, I think it is important to take a second look at things that might be brushed under the rug and realize that they do contribute to harmful behaviors in the long run as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those small things like just jokes, little comments, some innuendos, they, as Jemima says, lay the foundation for escalating behaviors. So not everybody's going to go to SA, but it makes it more permissible. And they're also really harmful in their own right. An accumulation of like endless comments on how I look can just undermines people's sense of well-being. So
Well, for someone who is hearing about SV Awareness Month for the first time, what are some of the events going on, and how can they get involved beyond the conversation that we're having here today?
Yeah, so SVAM is taking place all month long for the month of May. And the Harmony Project has organized, and also in partnership with a lot of different organizations and community groups in town, over 10 events that are taking place throughout the month. And the theme that we have this year is consent belongs in mountain culture. And with this, we really want to, we really just want to mainstream and normalize conversations around boundaries, healthy relationships, consent. And this is through all types of events. Some of them are directed at caregivers who might be wondering how to have conversations with their kids about these like boundaries, and then youth programming as well. We're also partnering with the Bow Valley Pride Network for a Film for Thought event where we're unpacking how healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships show up in LGBTQIA plus relationships. And yeah, so we have diverse events going on throughout the whole month, really targeted at all types of people in the Bow Valley, all types of age groups. One event that I wanted to highlight just because it relates quite closely with the prevention conversation we're having, although all these events tied to prevention work. It's a climbing event, a climbing and consent event, and at first you might wonder how that relates to SVAM or the connection with it. But yeah, with this event, we were really just hoping to normalize conversations around boundaries, limits, consent in a climbing setting. So it's really just unpacking what that looks like in the climbing gym and followed by a climbing session, but then normalizing these conversations and just becoming more comfortable with them so that it continues in the climbing gym, but also well beyond that setting as well. And what we're talking about, the ripple effect that it can have, and just having it in a setting that is approachable and embedded within our mountain community too. Yeah, so we have all of these events going on. They're all free, except for the Film for Thought one, which is on a sliding scale. But yeah, they're happening all month long. We have them on our website, like a calendar of events, and on our social media. So you
We've
can
been sharing
register
them this
there.
week too.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
stick along with our socials. We'll be sharing them as the month progresses as well. So lots of great stuff. Is this something that happens every year? Is this the first SVAM? What's the history behind?
It's been going on, yeah, it's Alberta wide, and the Harmony Project has been leading it for several years now. And every month, the focus or the theme of the month, we've adapted to what the priorities are or where the focus should be. And this month, we really wanted to bring prevention to the center of it and just amplify those conversations. Yeah.
It's a great idea. It's a great cause, that's for sure. Let's talk about the signal system a little bit, and as far as what problems that's trying to solve and what it is.
So the signal system really came about. We've been pulling it together for sort of the last 6 years. Started with some work with Calgary Police Service and developed this workplace intervention to enhance safety and belonging in the workplace. And I think where it originated is that employers tend to focus on policy and training in terms of strengthening workplace culture and reducing harassment. And both really matter, but they're not enough to change behavior on their own. And what we found through the research and the work that we did with Calgary Police was that social norms and networks are. And we've talked already a lot about the importance of social norms and how they influence our behavior. So that's what the signal system focuses on, is on those norms and networks. And so what we do is work with influential staff and other influencers to build their capacity to signal in everyday actions, kind of pro-social norms, and then also to disrupt problematic behaviors. And so the signal system has some key features that make it unique. The first is leveraging norms to change behaviors. And so really focusing, it's got this focus on behaviors and using the power of social norms. We have the example of the guy in the bar with his buddies, and if there's one influential person at that table who disrupts that sends a very clear signal that behavior is not okay. The second is that we focus on a tipping point. So again, what the research says, that if you work with between 18 and 25% of a population, and the behaviors change, and that 25%, those behaviors will spread. So we don't have to work with everybody.
Yeah.
We just have to work with about a quarter of the people. So let's say we're working with a big hospitality partner that employs 1,000 people.
Right.
If we work with 250 of them, that the behaviors that they start to demonstrate will spread through the rest of the staff. We work with influencers. Go ahead.
How do you find these influential people or know who they are within a company, or how can maybe our audience members know if they are one of those
Right.
influential people?
I mean, we call them social reference, and they are who are trusted and liked, and who other people look to for advice or how to behave. Typically, we have peers nominate them.
Oh, cool.
In Banff, like when we were working with Calgary Police, all the other patrol officers would nominate who do you like and respect on your team. Cool. In Banff, it's a little harder because with hospitality, because of the transient nature, and so we focus more on what we call formal influencers, who would be supervisors, people who are actually supervising other people, because they have a ton of influence over behaviors. And then we also look at identifying like longer term staff, older staff who've been there a long time, and we would have leaders identify people who they know staff look up to. So that's how we identify the influencers.
Awesome. Well, if that sounds like you out there, you may be wielding more power
Yes,
than you
that's
think,
exactly.
so
You
use it
really,
for good.
yeah, use it for good, for sure.
I don't know why you wouldn't, especially when we're talking about this. I think it's a very interesting topic for us, because when you're talking about especially prevention, it's like, why would you not want to prevent it?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like there's small little behavioral changes or signal changes, calling your buddy out when he makes that joke, saying, hey, like, this is not right. That goes a long way.
Goes a really long ways, like
long
way further than you would expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we've often focused like on policy and training and awareness raising, whereas I think and those are really important, don't get me wrong. But I think what the signal system gets at is that part in between, in terms of focusing on social networks and those small everyday actions, because we can talk about sort of respect and inclusion. What does that look like in practice?
Yeah.
And so building the skills and confidence of people to do it in the everyday, those small things. Other things are, we tend to start with what matters in any workplace setting that we're going into. So we do consultations, find out what's important, what's great about this workplace, what's not so great about this workplace, what do you want to focus on in terms of making it a better place to work? And we start there. We focus on belonging, not blame. So I've talked about that a lot in terms of how we frame it. Like when people feel blamed, they don't learn. So we really focus on how do you make this a safer place where people feel like they belong, and then finally the focus on behaviors and those small everyday actions. So that's those are the things that make the signal system unique.
Amazing. Let's see, when it comes down to skills, it sounds like there's a lot of skills necessary in order to impart these lessons on to those that need it, right? What are the skills primarily that you're focusing on?
Right. Well, I think we build some skills, and then we get into really very specific signals. And so in terms of skills, when we're working with those influencers, it's things like self-reflection, the ability to check my own assumptions, my own biases, self-regulation, not getting escalated, being able to manage strong reactions, to take feedback. Things like communication, conflict management, how do you minimize conflict, cultural competence, we talked about that, being able to understand, empathize, and interact effectively with folks who come from different cultures and different generations. Like you mentioned, sort of older school restaurant culture and sort of new school restaurant culture, and it's quite different. And so navigating across that generational divide is really important. Having a safety and belonging filter, so noticing when something's not right, noticing when people are being excluded, noticing when people are gossiping about particular people, paying attention to who gets to speak up, who has airtime, and trying to create space for other people. And then importantly, those pro-social norms and signaling those, and then disrupting the problematic behaviors. Those are kind of the skills that we focus on.
Yeah,
There's
for
quite
sure.
a few, but
No, but all important skills.
Yeah,
and honestly,
I mean,
the earlier you can impart these on people, the less chance you have, I think, for negative outcomes later on, right?
And I think what's interesting with these skills is all these skills that help to prevent also create healthy workplaces. They're all the things that you want to look for in a high-performing team. And so there's a really good alignment there.
And not to mention trickling down outside of the workplace into your
Totally.
own relationships
Yeah.
as they get closer to home. Of course, like all this information is great to have, and treating others with respect, right?
What about from a guest perspective? What responsibility do people have when they're maybe here out enjoying these spaces or these venues? What should they
I
be
think all
looking to do?
the things that we have talked about, just in terms of the same signals: humility, respect, kindness.
Well, with so many people through the park every year, like how do we get that message out to, say, the guests? Because obviously working in the community is a little easier. Everybody's here, right?
Right.
How do we kind of educate our guests visiting the park on that? Like, what kind of messaging can we put out? Or
I mean, I feel like there is a great opportunity with this Tourism for Good
Right.
initiative to add this. I think there's been some really good social marketing done around that in terms
Cool.
of setting expectations for guests. I think continuing with that and growing sort of the breadth of the messaging that, it's about where you put your garbage and how you interact with wildlife, as well as how you interact with staff and people and other guests, and how you party at night and what that looks like. I think there's a real opportunity to
Well, I'd say we've
expand
seen
on
it a
that.
million times, whether it's, Banff, Canmore, anywhere in the Bow Valley. Almost people, like, it's a little Las Vegas. Like, people come here
Yeah.
and party with no abandon, like they don't know anyone,
Yeah.
and it has no consequence, but it very much does have consequence. And I think it's that instilling in the short-term visitor that it does have an impact, and it does have consequences, your actions that you do. Like, if you wouldn't do it at home, maybe don't do it here, that
yeah,
it's kind of the main.
And I think that's the norms, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you have staff disrupting problematic, like consistently in small ways, just shutting it down, word spreads, norm spread that, like,
Oh, yeah.
Banff isn't, it's not Vegas.
yeah.
And that the way you come and enjoy yourself here needs to be different.
How can teams approach this conversation amongst themselves without it feeling like forced or like someone did something wrong?
Well, I think one of the things that we did with the signal system was came up with those really everyday kind of things that help create safety and belonging on teams. And so it's little tiny things. Get to know each other,
Yeah.
check in, ask for feedback, normalize giving and receiving feedback, debrief frequently, and not just when things go south on a shift, but when things are going really well, because then everyone gets used to it. Oh yeah, we just chat about what worked and what didn't. I think Jemima mentioned this, like, don't gossip. Like, we're humans, we gossip,
Yeah.
but malicious gossip can
That's
be so
huge.
harmful.
Hospitality.
And it's really,
that's
and it really undermines things, especially again when we have that live, work, and play together. So if you're getting gossiped at work, you can't get away from that because you
Yeah.
live with the people you work
Yeah,
with.
exactly.
So I think gossip can be really, especially problematic here. I think being kind, like treating mistakes as learning opportunities rather than cause for punishment. I think
Yeah.
that kind of old school, new school.
Yeah.
We want people to learn. We don't want to just punish them. Create space for quieter folks.
a big one.
Yeah, I think that really thinking about that. And I think in this really multicultural environment where you're working together, like celebrating atypical holidays or like non-Canadian holidays, I think it can go a really long ways to creating that kind of safety. But I think normalizing, you asked about what teams can do to make this
Yeah.
not weird, and I think it is normalizing giving and receiving feedback,
Yeah.
learning, humility, debriefs.
It's less about calling a meeting and showing a PowerPoint than like
the day to day
practicing these things day to day.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, it's really those
Interesting.
small things.
If someone in the Bow Valley needs support, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so you can reach out to the YWCA here in Banff. We have a 24/7 crisis line.
Very cool.
And or you can also show up on site as well. And as I mentioned before too, there's an emergency shelter that's also available if you are fleeing violence, or also relating to what we're talking about with how staff accommodation can be so tied up also if
Right.
you're feeling unsafe in that setting as well. And our services are available to people who have experienced harm, so through providing emotional support or system navigation, referrals, just connecting you with the information and support that you need. And it's also important to note that our services focus on people who have experienced harm, but also individuals who are supporting people who have experienced harm. So say your friend is going through something, or you're in the workplace and your colleague is going through something and you're not too sure how to support them. We're also a resource that you can draw on to help support you through that and walk you through how to maybe best approach it.
That's great. Instead of saying, like, asking your manager or someone above you who might out yourself in that situation, or you want to be a little bit more anonymous, that sounds like an awesome resource to me, for sure.
Very cool. Very cool.
How can the workplace make it easier for their employees to access support if they need it?
Yeah, I think with that, it can be as simple as making sure that the information is accessible and visible. So like you mentioned, not having like one meeting maybe during onboarding, but making sure it's like in the newsletters or posters that are put up in the workplace. And with this, also talking about how diverse the Bow Valley is, I think thinking about maybe ways you could translate that information to like the 3 main languages that are spoken at your workplace. There's also a resource that's Alberta-wide. It's called the One Line, and they are great to get in touch with if you're looking for information or resources, and they provide interpretation in over 200 different languages. So that's a great resource for workplaces if they're trying to navigate how to support people where English might not be their first language.
Right.
For sure, a lot of new arrivals to the Bow Valley, always, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they need support too.
And I think in the workplace, in terms of managers and supervisors, like building those relationships, talking about SV and harassment, and helping staff to understand that they're there to listen. I think some of the work that we have been doing is sort of building capacity to handle concerns that are brought to supervisors in a trauma-informed way, to make sure they're protecting confidentiality, to ensure that the person who's come forward with a concern gets to maintain control over the situation. I think sometimes people don't come forward with a concern because they're worried it's going to get out of control.
Right.
And that supervisors and managers can help them maintain control as they try to address the problem. So I think there's a lot that can be done, like right at the front line and on teams, in terms of helping people to get to have the courage to say something and then know they're going to be supported, as well as the outside kind of community resources that YW and others provide.
Absolutely. It looks like a multi-pronged approach to solving this here. And I think it's definitely great. I'm honestly very much looking forward to diving and not blowing, or what we could, fluffing it under the rug, or
pushing it under the rug.
I'm looking forward
sweeping it under the rug. I think
Jeez, I can find my words. Because it's definitely a conversation that needs to be had. We have a lot of contributing factors, I feel like, in the Bow Valley that can lead to these situations, and it's up to personal accountability to the people that are in these situations to make sure they end in a favorable way for all involved, And whether that's a small signal of telling someone that's not right, or being like, hey, that joke's not funny.
Right.
Like, that ripple effect is
huge.
It's huge.
And I think this is what is, I think part of the reason that SV has gotten swept under the rug so much is because people have been ashamed. They haven't wanted to talk about it. And I think part of what's helpful with the prevention lens is there is some optimism to it. It is like, let's stop violence before it starts. And there is a role for everyone. And I think historically people have often thought, like, that doesn't have anything to do with me. I don't perpetrate violence, or I'm not experiencing violence, so that's got nothing to do with me. Whereas prevention is everybody has a role in it. And so I think it creates a lot of space for more people to be involved. And it's just easier to talk about. It's easier not to, you're less likely to want to sweep it under the rug.
For sure. Which is what we don't want to do.
That's right.
Well, one last question I kind of want to hear from both of you. If someone takes away one thing from our conversation today, what would you hope that was?
I think for me, it's this idea that culture is something we create, that we create together. It's not doesn't just come out of nowhere,
Right,
and that
right.
it's our small everyday actions that create that culture. And I think not underestimating the power of the small ways, that if we are intentional about how we interact every day with our friends and our family and our coworkers, we can really make change. And I think this idea of demonstrating kindness and mutual respect and speaking up when something doesn't feel right, when we make those behaviors like seeable, explicit, we have to be able to see them for them to be norms. I think that's recognizing, being intentional about that and recognizing that can go a really long ways.
Okay.
Love it. What about you, Jemima?
Yeah, echoing what you're saying, but I think really seeing prevention is not an add-on or an addition to programming, but that it is really vital to what we're doing. And with culture also, that we do all play a role in it, and even small things like, say, you're coming to an event during SVAM or little acts that you're doing in your workplace, I think it really helps contribute to this culture of safety and belonging that is underway in the Bow Valley and that we're contributing to as well. So I think really just not undermining how those little call-ins or little acts that might seem small, that they really do make a difference in terms of making sure that the Bow Valley is safe.
What about you, Matt? What's your biggest takeaway from this conversation today?
I don't know. Just, yeah, like, do your part, especially for the homies out there, like the boys, like, you know how it gets with, like, the locker room talk, kind of, you know, whatever, banter back and forth. Like, it gets to a point where you just got to, soon, like, you're going to have to call it the homies, right? It just takes one of us to make a big difference. So, you know, if you see something happening, speak up. What's worse going to happen? You're going to get a dirty look from your buddy. Who cares? You know what I mean? But,
I think personal accountability is huge, right? And like you said, a lot of what we're talking about today, SA and DV, it's mostly perpetrated by men. And I think it comes down to what kind of man do you want to be, right?
yeah,
I personally don't respect men that treat people that way, and
no doubt.
I think neither should you, you know? And I think the more you stand by your own personal moral code and let it be known that you won't hang out with people that do that,
Fair enough.
right? Like, people that have nefarious intentions tend to out themselves quite early on.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to stand by that and, you know, be a strong person and stand up for what you believe in. And help your community. Because,
Awesome.
like, why not? You know? Like, we all want to live in a better place.
For sure.
Thank you so much for chatting with us today. We've unpacked a lot. We've made a lot of headway. We've learned a lot, too. I've learned a lot, like, especially in my own behaviors, talking about, like, workplace gossip and stuff. I'm like, man, maybe I need to check myself a little bit and kind of be a little kinder, more mindful in my own behavior. So thank you so much for chatting
Thanks for
today.
having
Thank
us.
you.
Really
What's
nice.
the first event for SVAM? How can people, where are we at?
Yeah, it's actually being kicked off. The first week of May is also Bow Valley Mental Health and Addictions Week.
Nice.
So we have a couple events in partnership with them. On May 4th, we have a Red Dress Reflection Walk to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit people. So that'll be coming up on May 4th. And then we'll also have a booth at the Welcome to Wellness Market in the Bison Courtyard.
Awesome.
With like a collaborative art piece that you can participate in and just get more information about what the Harmony Project is all about. Yeah.
Beautiful. So if this conversation's got you motivated, there's tons going on this month. We'll be linking all the events, all the information on our socials, so make sure you give us a follow. Overheard Pod Banff. Give the YWCA Banff a follow. Is there any socials for Shift at all?
There's not for Shift, but you can find us at preventdv.ca if you're interested in the signal system, just under workplace culture.
Love it. Or if you want to learn some more, like I said, great resources online through the University of Calgary and through the Harmony Project as well. Like, if you are in any type of unsavory situation and want to get the ball rolling on bettering that, I would recommend checking out those websites. So, a little selfless promotion. Big shout out to Defending Awesome. After all that, they're making our merch now. If you want to cop some of that, we got some on our website. Check us out at overheardpodbanff.com. They do way more than just merch. They do posters and artwork and all types of graphic design.
Oh, yeah.
as far as like regular printing stuff, if you need like some legal documents or whatever printed out, go see them, and they're just fun to hang out with. So
Oh yeah, great people.
stop by the shop, give them a WhatsApp, tell them we sent you. And that's all the time we have for today.
Awesome.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
again
us.
for joining us. And like every
Thanks.
week, we'll see you next Tuesday.